Hello everyone! Happy Friday. So today we are talking about taxonomy and I am joined by Tim, who works at the Adelaide Botanic Gardens. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, so I'm a botanist at the Adelaide Botanic Gardens and the State Herbarium of South Australia. And what I do is mostly taxonomy of plants. So you would have heard last week of about animals, and I do the same thing just on plants.
Yeah, because I think we did talk a lot about animals in the story with Ben, but yeah, you do a lot of work with plants, which is really, really interesting.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask a question from Ray from Rendlesham Primary School. Hello, Ray.
Hey, Ray.
They have asked, is taxonomy different to taxidermy?
Yes, it is. Yeah, of course.
Yes,
yeah.
it is.
Yeah. So taxidermy is that thing where you take a dead animal and you stuff it and things like that. Well, taxonomy is actually classifying life. So all types of life, whether it's animals, plants, or fungi, we're classifying life.
So yeah, they're very different.
Yeah.
We have a question from Thomas from Lucas Heights Community School. Hello, Lucas. Oh, sorry, Thomas. They have asked, how will you know if the animal is new or not? And maybe we can, extend this out to species, whether it's plants or animals or fungi.
Yeah. So if you're the expert in the group, what you do is you look at all the other things that occur within the group, and you try to work out if it's different than anything else in that group. And if it is, then you might have a new species there. And I have an example here.
Yeah, let's show everyone.
Yeah. So I have some plants here that are all considered the same species. So this is one of them. And right now this has one name, and this also is the same species. But taxonomists are currently working out if it's actually different than this other species.
And how do you figure that out?
So it's by looking at the morphology, so looking at the physical attributes of the plants.
Yeah.
And trying to work out, is it actually different? So you're looking for similarities and differences, and if there's any gradation into those. And you also probably want to have a lot of collections to do that as well. So not just like these ones here, but a whole big amount of collections that we have in the herbarium.
Yeah, because I guess to know whether a species is new, you have to compare it to every other species. And I guess there are taxonomists all around the world. So do you have to compare these plants then with all of the other plants that have been discovered around the world, or just in Australia? Or
what we would do is we would take this and we identify it, and we'd put a name on it, or what we think it is, or preferably down to genus, which is just the step above species.
Yes, and you would learn that from, I think we went through the taxonomic rank.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit higher up than species.
Yeah. So if we're looking for a new species, we try to place it within the genus if we can, and then within the genus we have an idea of what species actually are occurring right now within the genus, and we have that list, and we go through the list basically and say, oh, it's not there. This is actually doesn't match anything there, so it might be new. So you might dig in a little deeper and investigate more.
Have you ever found a new species yourself?
Oh yeah.
That's amazing. Can you tell us?
Quite a lot. Yeah, I mean, well, I specialize in a group called Herbardia, and also on a group where I did my PhD on Tylotus, and these occur throughout Australia, and they're quite diverse, and I've probably named about 30 to 40 species or something like that.
Wow, 30 to 40. What's one of the names you gave these new plants? It's 30 to 40, so there's a few.
It's hard to pick because I named one after a collector. So one of a recent one was Herbardia archeri, which is named after a guy called William Archer, who is the collector of the plant. And he lives near Esperance in Western Australia.
Wow.
And other times I've named things based off of the morphological details that are there.
Yes, and morphological. So you mentioned before that's the way a species looks.
Yeah, it's the form, it's the shape, it's basically the physical differences between the different species. You look at the morphology. Morphology.
Well, there's another word for your vocabulary.
Yeah.
Amazing. I want to know. I want to know, and so does Poppy from St. Pat's School. Where is the hotspot to find new species?
So we have a couple of different biodiversity hotspots in Australia. So southwestern Australia is a biodiversity hotspot, internationally recognized, and so are the forests of eastern Australia. So that's where a lot of new species are being discovered, but we're actually discovering new species all over the place, even in South Australia, where we're at right now.
It's so fascinating.
Yeah.
When I was speaking to Ben this week, he did bring up the figure that we've only found about 30%. And actually, Felix from Yucca Future Learning, hello Felix, they've asked, I want to ask this question from Carter and Jackson from Victory, I think Lutheran College. They say, why do people say that we have found 30% of species when we don't know how many animals there are? Yeah.
That's it. So,
which I think is a really fascinating question because,
absolutely.
I don't know, it's saying that we've only found 30%. That means that 70% is still sort of undiscovered, which is, when I found that out, I was like, what? That sounds crazy.
So we know how many there are currently and how many we're describing at a certain rate. And you can do maths by working out where that would reach what's called the asymptote, where that would come. Asymptote. So that where that would curve would end. Yeah. And you can say, oh yeah, we think it's about this many. So it's an estimate. And, it's probably a pretty good estimate because we know that there are certain groups like fungi and invertebrates where we just have a lot of things that we don't know what they are.
Yeah, and I guess we haven't fully explored the ocean yet either, have we?
Yeah.
So there's so many species out there to discover, which is really, really inspiring and, it baffled me in a lovely way. And I'm going to go back to Felix's question from Yucca Future Learning. So they have asked, how has modern technology changed the way scientists classify plants and animals compared to traditional methods?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. Like so definitely people like me and I assume Ben that was there last week.
Yeah.
We use morphology like they did back in Linnaeus' time.
So looking at the species.
Yeah, looking at the physical attributes of the specimen that you have. But we also are increasingly using genetics, so DNA, to work out if things are different, and that's a much more recent development.
Yeah.
And it's actually quite helpful because sometimes the morphology is lying to us.
Well, how does it lie to you?
So things might look very similar, or a species might be what we call plastic, in that it might look different in one environment, but if you put it in a different environment, it looks very different.
Wow.
But they're the same species.
Gosh, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
So it goes through lots of, I guess, levels of analysis before you actually classify it as something new.
Yeah, you can really dig in and use a lot of different lines of evidence, but it's usually down to practicality of how much time you have, how much money you have to spend on working on that, and people,
real life logistics.
People have worked on some groups for decades.
Yeah, incredible. We've got the whole class from Rendlesham Primary School. They've asked, can you give a shout out to our awesome teacher, Miss Chantel and Miss Jolly, for letting us watch BTN? Well, hello class from Rendlesham Primary School. And hello to your lovely teachers. And we thank them for letting you watch our show. I want to ask now, we've got heaps of questions coming in. Okay, this is an interesting one. This is from Abel from Rendlesham Primary School. Will the new Australian native animals go on coins? Well,
I don't know.
I think our new king will be going on our coins, but that would be pretty cool. And I know that recently, if you watched the $5 story from ages ago, we had some suggestions for what could go in our $5 note. So maybe you could. I don't think the suggestions are still open, but anyway. What's another good one? There's so many. I want to ask. Okay. So you've obviously named a lot of species in your time, Tim, but if you found a new species and could name it anything you wanted, what would you name it? And this is from Isla from St. Joseph's Geraldine School. I think that's how you pronounce it. Yes, if you could, so let's say you found a species today, a new one, what would you call it?
Yeah, it would really depend on what it is. If a name comes to you, so sometimes a name comes to you and it looks just like something, and you have a really good idea, and usually that's more like a eureka moment. It's not really something you plan.
What's a eureka moment?
Well, just like eureka, I have an idea.
Boom!
Yeah, exactly. It's like, I see something and it's like, oh, wow, that's really cool. Like, a partner of mine, we've named a Swainsona, which is a type of pea plant, and Swainsona picta, which means painted. And we named it that because the fruits have little painted dots on them. It's like a little dot painting.
Yeah.
And, that's kind of an example of, we just saw the fruits and we're like, oh, yeah.
And that's what a eureka moment is.
Yeah.
Whoa, another one for the vocabulary.
Yeah.
I want to ask now, because obviously you've spoken about rules, or like, obviously you can't name, a species anything you want. There are some things that you have to go by. What are those rules?
So they're called the rules of nomenclature. So we have the international rules of nomenclature for plants, algae, and fungi. But zoology, animals have a separate set of rules. So we actually govern ourselves different between plants and animals. But yeah, these are a huge set of rules. It's a book,
yes.
basically.
And I guess we went through some of them in the story. So, it can't be rude, it can't be offensive.
Yeah.
And I think you mentioned, we were chatting before, and you said, yes, you can't name it after yourself, which is also something Ben said.
Yeah, it's not really a rule. That's more of an unwritten rule.
You just shouldn't.
and yeah, exactly. But all of these have to be peer-reviewed in scientific journals. So you have your peers, your scientific peers, looking at this as well, and they might say, hey, maybe you shouldn't name it that. And, you kind of have to take that into account as well.
Yeah. No, it makes sense. Okay. This, I think we were talking about this one before. So this is Emma from Bellary Primary School. Hello, Emma. She has asked, how do they tell the difference between a new species or a different species they don't know yet?
So yeah, that's a really good question as well. So I would say, if it's a species I don't know, if it's a group that I'm not familiar with, I would do as much research as I can on that group first and try to identify it. And if I can put it within that group, figure out everything within that group that's already been previously named by past taxonomists. And if it doesn't fit with any of those things previously done by taxonomists, then I might have something new there.
Yeah. And what's that feeling when you do discover something new? Like, what does that feel like? Because obviously that's happened to you quite a few times.
Well, it feels great, yeah.
Yeah, it feels pretty good.
Yeah, it feels great.
Yeah. And so how do you find these new species?
It's... So I did, 4 years of a PhD, basically, and 3 years of a postdoc, and all of those things, I've been working on just one group of plants, and you just get to know them so well that it's like knowing your group of friends. You know all of them.
And so when there's a new one there, you're like, this is new.
You're different.
You're different from my regular friend group.
Yeah.
That's probably a good analogy.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've got Joe. Oh, okay. Jackie from your local Mars says, hi, it's Jackie from last AAR, and I see you do other AARs and just wanted to say hi. And I have a bug named after me. It's called Jacktron II. Well, maybe you can name your next... It would be funny as well if you named your next plant Jacktron II. I actually remember I was speaking to Ben about how... So obviously you might remember from the package, there's a new species called, I think, the Mephicer David Attenborough.
Yeah.
And at the end, obviously, there's an I, and I think for females, there's a different letter at the end. Do you want to sort of explain that? Because I found that kind of fascinating.
Yeah, it's A, which is AE, but that's the Latin ending. So Latin has grammar rules, which we have to follow for when we're making these scientific names, because technically they're all Latin names.
Yeah. A lot of the names of species go back to Latin, don't they?
Yeah, and that's more of a tradition that has been kept up ever since the day of Carl Linnaeus.
Yeah, well, there you go. Yep. It's a long running. I mean, a lot of our words as well, they stem from Latin too. Yep. This is an interesting one. This is Joel from Rendlesham Primary School. Hello, Joel. They've asked, what country has the most animal species?
Ooh, yeah. I'm not sure about animal species, and I'm not even really sure about plant species, to be honest, because there's a lot to take into account. But I know that in terms of describing new plant species, Australia is second in the world behind Brazil, and then I think a third is China. So these are very biodiverse areas for plants.
Gosh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess we're kind of in a hotspot to find new species.
Absolutely.
Wow, okay. That's fascinating. We've got a question from Mia from Rendlesham Primary School. Hello, Mia. She has asked, what do you have to do to become a taxonomy or a taxonomist? Like, do you have to go to university for it? And you kind of touched on this, but yes. So you went and did a PhD. You spent a lot of time at uni.
Yeah, exactly. So you have to, do your undergraduate at uni, and do it in biology, and you can either pick a animal focus stream or a plant focus stream or whatever you want to do. And if you're interested in that, then you can volunteer at the museum or the herbarium and dip your toes into research and see if research is for you. And if research is for you, you can go and do a postgrad.
Yeah, and I know Kale, one of our other reporters here, they did some time at the museum as well. And Kale actually found a new species of wasp, which is pretty cool as well. Cool. So he's got a wasp that he was able to name, and which is, again, super, super cool.
Yeah, that's cool.
We've got Irene from MLC School. Hello, Irene. She has asked, what's your favourite species of animal?
My favorite species of animal?
Yeah.
Oh, I love echidnas.
Echidnas are really awesome, aren't they?
Yeah.
I'm trying to think what my favourite species of animal would be. I guess, I don't know, I'm a big fan of elephants.
Yeah.
I love elephants. They're wise, beautiful, been around here for a long time.
Yeah.
And another one from Irene. When you were young, did you ever wonder about taxonomy? And she said in brackets, I did.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I probably didn't have a good idea of what it is, but I would learn plants, in the forests that I would go walking in and wanted to figure out what's that thing. Right?
Yeah.
I think everyone thinks that in their heads, like, oh, what's that? It's weird.
Yeah.
That looks new.
But you don't really realize that that's what taxonomy kind of is as a job.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. It's looking at the natural world and classifying things, putting things into these boxes that we give names.
Yeah, which is kind of wonderful because it's sort of taking that natural curiosity that we have about the things and the living things around us, and then actually being able to take that and make it your life's work. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Do you love your job?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
This is sort of going back to the deep ocean discussion. This is Evie from North Ainsley Primary School. I think that's how you pronounce it. Hello, Evie. They have asked, how do we discover plants and animals in places we can't get to? For example, the deep ocean.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's really hard to go, discover something new in a place you can't go to.
Yeah.
So like the specimens that I showed you here of the plants, we want to get one of those for animals or plants. We want to get a specimen, which is the exemplar that we use for that new species. And the one that the author of that species designates is called the type. And we need one of those types so that we can examine it and so that other scientists as well can examine it. And because any future revisions that we have to taxonomy, any changes that we have within taxonomy, we'll need a specimen to go back to and figure out, hey, these other things, are they that or are they something else?
Yeah.
We need something to physical to tie it back to.
I mean, that makes sense because it's a very long process to discover whether something is actually new. And so if you don't have that original specimen there, you don't really have anything to compare other ones to. And so you can't really decide whether it's new or not, I guess.
It's very difficult.
Yeah. We've got a question from Jasmine from Rendlesham Primary School. Hello, Jasmine. They have asked, how long does a taxonomy project take?
But it depends.
That's a giveaway, so I'm assuming a long time.
It depends on the group, and it depends on your aim. If you have a very diverse group, like what I worked on for my postdoc, which is probably going to be nearly 500 different species.
Wow.
Then it'll take years basically. But if it's a much smaller group, then it can just take several months, a year for you to work out the differences and to write a scientific paper describing the new species. So it really depends on what project it is.
Yeah. And you've also brought some flowers over here that you've pressed. Do you want to maybe explain this process? This is a part of Tim's job as well.
Yeah, so I'll go back to these specimens here. So this was the specimens I showed you before. So we pressed these. and we dry them to preserve them. And once we do that, they can actually, they're actually preserved for hundreds of years. So we have, at the herbarium, we have specimens from the Flinders expedition to South Australia.
Which was, just so these guys kind of get an idea of how long ago that was.
It's a couple hundred years ago.
Yeah.
So what we do is still what they kind of did back then is we take these plants and we press them. So I have just a little contraption here we call a plant press, which has some straps. It has some hard metal bits, and in between there's some cardboard and some newspaper. And what I've done is I have taken the newspaper and I put a plant in there, and then I smashed it basically. So let me get these off for you.
Wow, that is just newspaper.
So what we have is a quandong, which is called scientific name santalum, which was just pressed, and here are some of the fruits. So that was just pressed. And yeah, I mean, so we do that, and once we have it pressed, we put it in a special dryer, and we dry it. And once it's dry, it'll be preserved for those hundreds of years in our herbarium.
Yeah. Because I remember when I was little, I don't know whether you guys like doing this too, but sometimes I would find flowers and, because you want to keep a pretty flower when you find it. So you can, I got this like little flower press machine. And yeah, you kind of squish it together and then, yeah, I got to keep it and I think I made one into a bookmark.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's amazing that's kind of how we document and keep I guess the specimens that make up our library of living things.
Absolutely.
In terms of plants.
For plants, it's the easiest way to preserve them is to actually press them and then mount them on a card like this one, which we just glued them on. So like that, they keep the shape, and that's really important as well.
Yeah. Sophie from Rendlesham Primary School has said that she has a flower press at home, but it's a quarter of the size of yours.
Oh yeah, that still works. It still works.
It still does the job.
Yeah.
Yes, this is a very, very large flower press, but this is, I guess, what the experts use.
Yeah, it's what we use. It's about the size of a newspaper exactly, and that's the size of the cards we use, which gives you enough space to have a really good size specimen there.
Yeah. There's two great questions here. One's from Abel. They've said this is actually a statement rather than a question, but they've said at their school we did a bug investigation and we found 10 new species.
That's great.
How amazing is that?
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. And then Joel has said, I think this is a question for you, Tim.
Yeah.
What is your favourite plant you named?
Ooh.
There's quite a few to choose from.
There's quite a few. I would say probably one that I named after a guy I know. I called my mate who's in Western Australia.
Yes.
So I named it Tylotus davisii after him. Is Robert Davis.
Oh, that's lovely. Because I guess, you can't name it after yourself, but you can name plants and animals after the
Yeah,
ones you
he's
love.
also a taxonomist that's worked on that.
So he's probably been like, I would love to name a species after myself, but I can't. And then you're
well, I did the work in describing it, but he was there also helping me discover it. So.
Oh, how wonderful.
Yeah.
And just out of curiosity, what does it look like when you're discovering these new species? Are you, what does that look like?
It varies, but I would say a lot of the time it looks like we're a librarian going through a bunch of things inside the herbarium, and we're figuring out the differences inside the herbarium. Sometimes you're out in the field, out in the bush, and you stumble upon something new, and you say, if you're the expert, you say, that's new, and you know it.
Again, the friend group, you're like, that's a new friend.
Exactly. So that rarely happens, but it does happen, and when it does, it's really special.
Yeah, and that's so wonderful that you and your friend were able to do that together.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember when I was talking to Ben, he sort of mentioned, there was the other taxonomist in the package called Brian. He was talking about how, I guess, taxonomy is almost like, important just in the same way that, when you go into a library and there's different, I guess you've got a fiction section, you've got a non-fiction section, and you've got maybe like a science section, and then like within the science section, then there's the, chemistry section. That's sort of how taxonomy works in terms of like, that's almost like an analogy for the taxonomic rank. Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah. So we have, in our herbarium, we have things sectioned off between, if it's a flowering plant or a non-flowering plant. And then within the flowering plants, we have all the different families, which is the step above a genus. And then within all the families, we have all of the genera, which is just plural for genus. And then within the genus, we have species. So it goes in this, it's very, very, very similar.
Oh, we've got a question from Van. Hello, Van. They've asked, what if we go to Mars, find Jackie the alien, and name him as an animal?
Well,
what if?
If you do that and you're the one to discover it, you can name him.
That might require you going into space, so I hope you're training to become an astronaut. What's another good one? Van has also asked, is there a plant that's named after you? Which no. So maybe one of you guys watching could find a new species and then you could name it after Tim.
Yep, there you go.
Maybe we should do that. Amazing. Okay, we're going to finish up with some shout outs. There's lots of schools watching. We got Forbes North Public School. Hello, guys.
Hey.
Yuga Future Learning. Hello, guys. St. Joseph's Gerald Dyer. Gosh, I'm really just fumbling over all of these, but hello, guys. We've got Daniela Heights Primary School, WA. Hello, guys. North Ainslie Primary School. Hello, guys. Lots. And of course, we've got Rendlesham Primary School. You guys have been sending in loads. Thank you guys so much for tuning in.
Thanks.
It's been wonderful speaking to you, and I'm sure everyone watching has learnt so much. I've learnt so much.
Yeah, no, it's great to be here. Yeah.
And I guess the exciting thing is that, as we sort of mentioned before, as you did mention, it was an estimate, but around only 30% of the species here in Australia have actually been discovered, named and classified.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's a huge opportunity for, you guys watching to go outside, go adventuring with your friends, perhaps like Tim did, and find something new, whether it's a plant, an animal, fungi even.
Absolutely, yeah. Go take pictures of things in nature, and you'll have experts looking at the pictures, put them online or something, and things have been found new that way.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Amazing. And that's an opportunity that anyone can take.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And remember, if you do find something new, who are you going to name it after? Well, guys, thank you so much for watching. And we both hope you have a wonderful weekend. And tune in next week. Bye.
See ya.